Mr. Danson Omari has on a number of occasions, of course, won these cases on very dubious situations or circumstances, necessitating a fact-finding mission which will ultimately lead to his removal from the role of advocates as being one of the advocates of the High Court of Kenya that have been abetting or aiding in corrupt practices within the judiciary. Now, following that accusation, this morning, on the 23rd day of December, I have written a letter to the former president of the Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Nelson Havi. I have called him to account. I have asked him, with the instructions of my client, Mr. Danson Omari, that he offers an apology within not more than 7 days, upon which, if he fails to make an apology for statements that we find to be scandalous, we find to be defamatory, we find in all humility that are false, in view of the fact that one, Mr. Danson Omari has only appeared on 2 matters before my Lord Justice Alfred Mabea. And on these 2 matters that my client appeared before my Lord Justice Alfred Mabea, he lost 1 and he won 1 case. So the assertion that made by the former president of the Law Society of Kenya, that my client is in a way, has been procuring or has been obtaining favorable judgments before my Lord Justice Alfred Mabea, is quite unfortunate, is untrue, is false, and for that reason is defamatory. And I have asked him, knowing too well that my client has been an advocate of the High Court of Kenya of good moral standing for the last decade and counting, knowing too well that my client has been a law lecturer at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, has been a mentor for that reason. He has influenced so many young lawyers who look up to him. And when his reputation has been called to question or is called to question, that in itself dents his reputation, destroys his business and his credibility as a law-abiding citizen within the Republic of Kenya. So you know too well that my client has equally been well sought after by local and international media houses due to his integrity, due to his knowledge, his wide knowledge of the different areas of law, and as a former public servant, he's been of good moral standing and of good integrity. And he's one individual that has in the previous past, availed himself for the appointment of the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So for that reason, we have demanded a retraction of the statements that were published by the former president of the Law Society of Kenya in a newspaper of nationwide circulation. Secondly, we have asked him that after the publication of that apology to my client, Mr. Danson Omari, then we should have a sit down to discuss on the appropriate compensation that my client should be getting in view of these defamatory statements that he made. Lastly, and I will make this mention as an officer of the court. Well, the ghost of corruption is one that we have been also fighting against. My client is on record on a number of occasions making complaints before the Judicial Service Commission, calling the Judicial Service Commission to reprimand.
I know very well Mr. Havi is bitter for the dwindling fortunes of his practice. Show me one client that is paying, that is represented by Havi. All briefs are from the Law Society of Kenya. I've never represented Law Society of Kenya. If fortunes change, then the briefs he was getting them by virtue of his position as the president. The market is open for anybody who is properly knowledgeable in law to practice. The judicial officers, I personally have only appeared in 2 matters, commercial matters. I never practiced commercial law. One, Desiree Erwandis, which I won. The other one was Miasis Sugar, which I lost. So anybody saying that my practice is basically at Justice Mabea's place is misplaced. Mr. Havi has started an attack on the Chief Justice, on the Supreme Court, on the Court of Appeal, on the High Court, on the magistrates, and lastly, clerks. This attack is well funded. Is well funded by people who want to take judiciary captive, headed by Havi. You know, the judicial officers cannot call a press conference and address their issues. I know advocates who have failed to practice and make money are salvating to get those jobs if vetting comes and judicial officers are removed from office. Havi and team, you know there is JC. If you have any complaint against a judicial officer in the performance of their duties, take that complaint to JC. If you have any complaint against a judicial officer that is criminal in nature, take it to the DCI or take it to EACC. That is my free advice to have. Be very, very grateful and with some humility admit failure, that nobody in the judiciary or none of the advocates like me and Shadrach will
of magistrate from office on allegation of corruption. So it cannot be, or it cannot fall in the mouth of the former president of the Law Society of Kenya to suggest or even imagine that my client has, through corrupt practices, procured favorable judgments from my Lord Justice Alfred Mabea. So for that reason, I am hoping in a letter that I have since served on my former president that is going to do the needful so that we can find a solution to this problem. In any event, the fight against corruption is a fight that we all want won. But we can't do that if we try and murky the waters by now, drawing long drawn conclusions about the credibility or the integrity of certain individuals. If you have evidence as to the corrupt dealings that my client has been dealing before my Lord Justice Alfred Mabea, it is important that that evidence is made available to all and sundry so that this dragon of corruption can be slain. Otherwise, when you drag the name of my client, into this corrupt dealings without any iota of evidence, then that is going to lead to some very serious ramifications, some very serious consequences, which we are going to follow. So that in the fullness of time, if the 7 days expire and my former president does not offer a satisfactory apology that is going to be accepted by my client, then take it from us that we shall take the necessary legal action so that he answers to some of these wrongdoings that he's been making. Thank you. That is all from me.
Because my advocate has ably represented me. Nelson Havi has won very many cases before courts. The celebrated BBI was led by Nelson Havi. That time the judiciary was not corrupt. The rain started hitting Nelson Havi when, before he attained 15 years of practice, he wanted to be the LSK president. Matter went to court, he lost. He lost and he was not in the ballot. That is the first beef Havi has with the judiciary. The second issue, when he was at last elected, he led the Law Society of Kenya in a manner that necessitated his impeachment from office by the judiciary. That is the second issue that makes Havi mad with the judiciary.